Hola, amigos Retumba. I had a pleasant talk with Alfonso today. We touched on many different subjects pertaining to both art and life, and where art imitates life and vice versa. We're also coming over to Mexico in the autumn of the year. Please join us. Which guitar should I pick along on the way? I have some guitars on the wall. I also have, too many guitars. Take care. Now fuck off.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview. I'm Alfonso on behalf of Retumba, a Mexican blog about the new era of extreme music. Today is with me a very special guest, Mr. Yusaf Parvez, also known as Vicotnik, the founder, leader, frontman, and main composer of Dodheimsgard. Hello, Yusaf. Welcome, and thank you for being here. How are you today?
Hello, Alfonso. Honored to be here. So can't wait for the chat.
Perfect. Well, of course, I invited you here to talk about your new work, your new release, Black Medium Current, which released just 2 Fridays ago via Peaceville Records. How is so far the response? How are you feeling with the overall feedback?
To be honest with you, I haven't seen any negative feedback at all. So it's actually been quite overwhelming feedback. You never count on it, especially when making music or making any art. I guess like it's a very, very lonely process in many ways. So you're kind of stuck with it for years, and after years of working with it, it's part of you, but you don't know how it's going to be perceived anymore, because you don't know if you like it yourself. You've been just around it for so long, so you're kind of blinded by it, and at the same time you're obsessed with it and needs to finish it. So and for most part, all our albums with Dödheimsgard has been quite well received by both the public and also the magazines and the journalists and reviewers and whatnot. But I guess some of the albums have maybe been gotten good reviews for the wrong reasons sometimes, that people find it interesting or uncommon or ungeneric, so to speak, whereas this album, it feels more like the people are also using other adjectives as beautiful and immersive and stuff like that. In addition to being a record that's also a bit unusual compared to the general releases that are coming from the genre.
So in a way, you don't indulge yourself with the idea of, okay, this is perfect and this is all going to be positive reviews, positive feedback. You are nervous somehow.
No, I'm not nervous. I accept it. And okay. This is something, I think maybe this is a good lesson for artists, is that if you make something publicly, everybody's allowed to have an opinion about it, and you must accept that, So I'm not anxious. I'm always looking a bit forward to it in a way, getting all the perspectives. And what I enjoy the most is if I know that I put certain tangents into the music and certain tangents into the concept and the lyrics. So I'm also very excited when reading reviews from people I never talked about in my life, if they will use the same kind of words that correlate with the tangents I put into the music. And that's quite a fascinating kind of thing, because that means if they do, your experiment is successful.
Yeah.
So if you're bound to make a very emotional, immersive album that has kind of a psychological substrate to it, and then when you start reading the reviews, you see all these reviews talking about all these different aspects. Then I deem that a success, even more so than if the journalist writing about it likes it or not, as long as it comes across in a sincere and thorough way, I guess.
Yeah, it's my belief that your music, your creation has like a certain way of, or goal to provoke people. You know, it's not just simple. It has like something behind to provoke.
Yeah, I guess with 666 International, if we go back to 99, one of the big subjects and prospects was to provoke, because we felt already then, and even had felt for a few years, that the genre was getting very stagnant in a sense, that like the dark throne copy bands were popping up 13 a dozen, basically, so mindset was really, making good music, of course, and music we found interesting ourselves, but also as a side note, we wanted to kind of challenge the genre. I still want to challenge the genre, but I'm not that obsessed with provoking anymore, but I would want to evoke. So I
you
want
make
to
that
evoke,
switch.
Yeah, and I want to evoke some kind of, like, both on the emotional level and also on the intellectual level. And I think, like a lot of releases, when people like them, it's like it's so the words that I used are so generic sometimes, like, yeah, it's really badass, or it's really cool, or it's really, I wanted to avoid all these words, and instead of getting those kind of praises, I really wanted people to immerse into themselves and bring out kind of a more creative way of analyzing the album. This is what the album is meant to give you as a listener. So I was very happy reading a lot of the reviews I got for this record, being small artworks, being small pieces of artworks themselves. You could see like the writers had really, really taken the time putting their words to the paper. So I was really, really happy about that.
Yeah, in a way, is to elevate the reflection of inwards, but while listening and experience the music.
Exactly. And instead of like evoking, like from the listener saying, yeah, this is badass, you're challenging him to find better words to describe the emotion the person is feeling.
Yeah, and personally, that's one of the things that I enjoy the most about doing reviews for albums. Find that challenge aspect of myself to get to the proper idea, even if I'm wrong, just to find the right words that correlate in my mind perfect or even correct. Okay, so over the course of this conversation, it's my intention to touch base on several aspects of your work, your career. But first, I would like to start with your origins. With this question, how early in your life did you discover your spark for artistic expression, and was it always channeled through the form of music or extreme music itself?
I think for me, like, to take it from the start, I grew up with music, basically. Not with musician parents or anything, but I grew up with parents that enjoyed music, which meant, I grew up with a record player in my home. Sometimes, luckily for me, the TV was off and they were playing records instead. There was always music in the car. So I always was a music lover. But, it's a long stretch from being a music lover into being a content creator. So I didn't know that at that point, that this is what I wanted to do. And then you have to kind of take these humble beginnings, and you have to kind of place them somewhere in an environment. And in my environment, I always felt sort of like the outsider wherever I lived, like if it was in India, I was the white guy. If I lived in Scandinavia, I was the guy with foreign parents. And even internally in my family, you know, even if it was on purpose or not, I felt like, you know, like I didn't 100% belong in a sense, you know. So to rectify this, you know, you have no experience, you have no means of independence, you have no money to kind of explore around. So you try different things, I guess, you know, to figure out what's missing. And that can be something like tennis, you know. You buy a racket and you think, okay, I'm going to be a tennis player now, you know, like, is this what I'm searching for? And you play tennis for a while and you think, no, this wasn't it. And you throw the racket away, you know, and then you try football and you find out you suck at it, you know, and you go like, no, this wasn't it. And all the while your environment is also filled with music and maybe the books and movies and stuff like that, things you enjoy. And suddenly you get a guitar, you know, and then everything kind of fell in place. The first thing I did was making a song. It was a shitty song, but that was the first thing I did. I didn't sit down to learn a chord. I didn't sit down to learn another artist's songs or anything. I just sat down and tried to write a song. Basically, the first thing I did, the first time I had a guitar in my lap, and it fell in place, you know. And I'm also lucky in the sense that a lot of things was happening kind of in the underground music scene in Norway at the same time, or at least maybe a year later, like come 91, 92, a lot of stuff was going on. And instead of being far removed from it, you know, you find yourself being in the midst of it, you know. So it's not me admiring grunge in Seattle, which would put me geographically very far away. It's me admiring underground and harsh, extreme music in Norway and in Scandinavia. And not only in Norway, like the Mayhem rehearsal place was 20 minutes from where I lived, you know. So stuff like that also kind of made you realize that this isn't something untouchable. It's not right. Looking at Iron Maiden or Metallica posters and seeing these gods that are untouchable. It's basically your neighbor, you know, playing in a metal band, inviting you to underground show, which was like mad ass and crazy, and so it made it tangible and real, basically, you know. And from there you try to build your legacy, I guess.
So from the start, you have this let's say passion to emit something out, even though you didn't learn to play the guitar, but you started doing your own pieces, and yeah. Black metal was your context, your medium, the most approachable.
The black metal context was my medium because it was very local. Exactly. So, but I think you know, you can throw in some other stuff in there as well. The need to express oneself, you know, like being from two cultures, for example, you know, and my two cultures always knocking heads with each other, you know, and me kind of in the middle of it all. It needed me to kind of form a language that I didn't have. And I realized, like, okay, all these kind of frustrations, all my kind of all of my kind of thoughts that are drowning in the conflict or in the kind of whirlpool of emotion, I have no language for it, you know. So I needed to kind of find a language for it. And to begin with, you know, and that correlates very good with the records as well, because to begin with, you know, my records are primarily anger. My demos are primarily anger and frustration, and, you know, like in some way or another. And obviously, or as time moves along, you get more experience, and you know, you become an older human being. You find other ways to express perhaps more deeper underlying thing, the things that are underlying for that, basically.
Yeah, and anger is like the most primal emotion behind black metal, or one of them.
Yeah.
So I guess you didn't make any mistake while to immerse yourself in black metal, because you have dedicated most of your life or your entire adult life to this art, the art of extreme music, and being attached to black metal as an entity, Vicotnik. So I guess my question, and I'm very interested into your opinion. What is black metal for you nowadays?
For me, and I don't say it necessarily has to be this for somebody else, but for me, black metal is a place and a time. Obviously, black metal is also a musical genre. You know, you can play black metal using these and these instruments, using this and these clothes, using this and this makeup, using this and this. You know, you can build it. But I'm not interested in that aspect of black metal. What I'm interested in is like what black metal is for me. It's a place and time. And this place and time, it contains quite a few individuals. I don't know, maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 200 people, you know, and that is black metal. And like I said in a couple of interviews already, I am black metal, you know. I'm not the musical genre as we kind of analyzed it to be in retrospective. I am the story, you know, and I'm still around to tell the story.
You don't separate yourself from it to this day.
No, you know, it's given me so much. So, you know, part of making an album like Black Medium Current is giving back to it. And the way I give back to it is by still challenging myself and developing my skills in how to make music, so that I can expand the understanding of what black metal can be.
Yes. In several of your interviews also, because you mentioned it, you talk about growth and the change as an artist, and time and place that belongs to a period of time, especially your records. So my question to that would be, in what ways has changed your purpose to emit something out, write new music, play it? Because also I want to mention that you are very forward to answer your fans' questions in social media. So for me, you are not one of those artists to continue to in the loop just for the paycheck.
No, you know, like I think sometimes black metal can be more worried about their facade, and that it's not very black metal to answer their fans. But I think that it's a fallacy, basically, because the fans are the reason why you're there in the first place. So it's a very easy problem, in the sense that the fans are showing their appreciation, and I want to show my appreciation back. And I think also this is a genre where it's kind of idiotic to talk and define the people who like your music as fans. You know, we're not Beyonce, for fuck's sakes. You know, a bit of the reason for creating this genre in the first place was to avoid kind of the commercial tropes, you know, having a higher and a lower, having a sort of hierarchy. So, you know, like, so basically I'm just interacting with the people that like my music, basically. And we probably have a lot in common when it comes to various records that maybe many of us grew up on, you know. So I don't feel anything, I feel it more rewarding this way. And it also gives me, you know, like sometimes some trolls come around, and it also gives me some opportunity to talk with them. And, you know, like, I'm not saying I will always have the time to answer every single message left for me. But when I do, I think it's the respectful thing to do, basically.
And
someone invests time in you, you know, money in you, wear your clothes, buy your album, play your album, promote you online, you know. The smallest thing you can do is say thank you, you know.
So in what way does your appreciation from the beginnings to nowadays has your motivation, your purpose to continue making music has changed, or has it stayed the same?
Yeah, it's basically the same. The thing is that, like, you find you get older, so you find more ways to reach what you're searching for. You know, like when you're a kid, you know, like rebellion is great, you know, like and anger is great, and you know, because these are very empowering feelings, you know. But like, let's face it, I live in Norway. I have nothing to rebel against in that sense. So I need to find another substrate to connect to, you know, and you know, mental conditioning, behaviorism, you know, like psychological darkness. These are quite interesting for me after a pretty long life, you know, like and you know, a pretty hard road. So this is also a therapeutic thing in the sense that when I'm doing this, when I'm writing these lyrics, when I am making this music hour by hour, day by day, month by month, year by year, I'm also in a process where I'm analyzing myself and what I really think in regards to certain things, you know. So in that sense, you know, it's not only music making, it's also a process in which you grow, basically. You get a better understanding of yourself. And on a practical level, that, you know, that can help you in the practical life as well, to be a good father and you know, to be morally righteous and try to do the best you can, basically.
Yeah, so in that sense, it's not only a gateway, but also a way of enriching yourself as a human being.
Yeah, because you know, this is the language I have for that. You know, I don't have a therapist, and you know, and cutting bread, making food won't cut it. You know, this won't give me the answers. You know, jumping out of the window, that's not an option. So you know, like, what tools are you left with? Yeah, it's the artistic expression, you know? Because the artistic expression, it works on so many levels. You know, a painting can be, you know, like, you can admire it for its colors. You can admire it for its realism, or you can admire it for the atmosphere, or you can admire it for. So it works on so many levels, you know, as does music, probably more.
And in a more abstract way.
Yeah.
So back to the conversation about black metal from the orthodox way of the genre, with its own taboos and conservatism, to the modern sounds and of the genre and the, I don't know, more of a marketing product placement nowadays for the genre. Do you think black metal as an art form has diminished over the years?
You know, I feel it's a very difficult question to answer. You know, it's very easy to say yes in my position, but the truth is, I haven't listened to enough new records to really say that. You know? But I think the motivation has changed. I think you have to look at this as what is historically different, and if we can find certain things that are historically different from black metal in the past and black metal now, there will also probably be some definable differences in the art itself, or the output of the art, and how you present the art, you know. And my understanding is this, that the most the biggest difference from the past to the present is that the present has the past to build on, whereas the past didn't have a past to build on, which means that in the present, when you create a band today, you can look at other bands and you can say this was successful. I think I'm going to try that. That behemoth kind of way of things looks like a fucking success. I think I want my band to sound like them, you know, like, whereas we didn't have all that back in the 90s. There weren't that many comparisons, you know, and there was also kind of there were no festivals that invited us to play there. There were no really interested record labels, so people from the scene created the first record labels instead, because nobody else wanted to release this music. So we didn't have the external motivation, basically. So that's why I think if you go back to the products, it's a very, very conscious choice on the content, that the content had to be kind of individualistic. It had to kind of be a representation of yourself. Whereas today, I think a lot of players, I'm not saying all of them, are also considering what's important for the market. You know,
Right.
what can we do so we will get a record deal? What can we do so we can play this and this festival? What can we do? You know, so we didn't have those comparison levels because there were no record labels, there were no festivals, there were nothing like that. So it was only the music. Only the music.
But for example, your band or your projects over the years hasn't course correcting that pathway to market your music. So you have stayed in the way of, you know, the alternative path.
Yeah, I think, you know, like, that's why I'm saying that, not like the question you asked 5 minutes ago, like what have changed from
Right.
You know, like I said, nothing. Basically, it's still the same mindset. Like, I'm still working from the same model. The thing is, I have more equipment now. I have more skills now. I'm older now. I have more experience. I have more to talk about. You know, I have a
Yes.
bigger understanding. So this has changed. The quantity of what I possess has changed, but the mindset is basically the same.
Your tools at your disposal basically has grown and expanded.
Exactly.
Okay, my electricity is kind of glitching, so if I lose you, it's but can you give me please an email to send you a link if that happens, to regain the conversation?
Yeah, let's see. Is it a chat here?
Why do you think black metal as a genre has always been one of the variants of extreme music or metal which lends heavily into innovation and keeps experimenting and moving forward, aside from other styles of music, heavy music?
Yeah, I think, you know, a part of the reason there is kind of this the initial starting point of black metal. If you one thing is that a lot of us black metal guys in the 90s, we started doing black metal because we felt death metal was becoming so generic, basically. So in one sense, it's a response to that. And you know, when you think about also the few like 20, 25 first bands, they are all unique. So then you have this treasure grove, you know, of all these that basically is the starting point, you know, like the Mayhems and the Bursums and the Dark Thrones and later the Satyricons and, you know, all Ulver and all the bands, you know, they all sounded uniquely different. So having that as a starting point, it kind of set it was set from the start that this is a genre you can experiment quite a lot in and still be in the same genre, you know, which makes it very interesting in the sense that, because I think a lot of other genres has less expandability, basically, you know, like
Yeah.
like,
But it's interesting.
Some genres are kind of dependent on their swing and their time, you know, like certain form of dance music and stuff like that. So it can't have that variation because it needs that same beat to be defined as that music. So when a music form like black metal is more abstractly defined, and sometimes more defined by the content in the lyrics than the actual output of the music, then that gives for a lot of creative freedom.
But it's interesting because, well, at least to my perception, black metal started being very constrict in itself, very much without much room for flexibility there. But over the years, for example, Buens Ende was a starting point to make the switch for new territories, new ventures in the genre. So it's funny that you mentioned. I mean, it's a.
I think, even if Buens Ende and DØDHEIMSGARD, I think both bands released their first album in '95. We had been into the black metal scene for years already. I started playing black metal in '91, and a lot of my friends, that's the year they popped up, basically. So we still work from that mindset, even if our album is out in the mid-90s. We kind of worked off the outset of being originality, being a big part of this art form, because this art form is not only to serve the listener with music, it's also telling the listener who we are, basically. So that's why we always kept the identity. And I think, like I said earlier, that the more generic forms of black metal, a few bands were more visible than the other bands. So when the big, hundreds and thousands of people came into the genre, it was easier to pick up on the bands that were visible. I think the Darkthrone style is probably copied a million times, basically.
Yes, and still to this day. So Vicotnik and Dodheimsgard, by association, gravitates heavily around a lot of avant-garde over the years. So my question is, what or how was the first time you associated extreme music to the concept of avant-garde?
I never did. For me, I'm only making music, and I think sometimes it's a bit of a futile task to grant yourself titles. So I've always said I play black metal because that's where I'm from. The avant-garde moniker, it's been given to us by other people, and but I respect that. It's given out of love and respect, so I have no problems with that. But I've never kind of considered what I do avant-garde, because on one notion, the term is so wishy-washy. It's like talking about a soul, or as that something is spiritual. What the fuck is it? It's like one word that can be used in a million different ways. So it doesn't really tell you much, But like I said, I'm really appreciative because it was given to us, and I think people like me and Carl Michael from the Buens, and we kind of looked as the forefathers of avant-garde now. So which is a great honor for us to have, basically. Yeah.
And for me also is like a very volatile notion or intangible, the avant-garde aspect of music, because it depends of one's perception if you find it or not, but you accept the notion. So and you take it, you accept it. So the aspect of avant-garde music, extreme music, do you think it holds weight, meaning behind it? I mean,
no, that's my problem with the definition, because as time went on, we're going into the 2000s and 2010s and whatnot. You see all this music being labeled as avant-garde, and it really isn't. It's still So it's just like 20-year-old copies of copies of 20-year-old albums that were made in the past. So that's why I felt like this term doesn't really hold any weight anymore. So in that sense, it doesn't mean much to me. I understand that is sort of a classification, but the only thing this classification is saying now is that this is black metal, but it's a bit different. So it's not saying much more than that.
A deviant form of black metal.
Yeah, and a lot of the projects aren't even that. Like.
Yeah, and that's exactly my thought about it. Okay, so back to my point of avant-gardism. I concur with your opinion, because it can be wishy-washy, a wishy-washy term, or it can become a gimmicky association of music. Like one band from this year came out using reference to your music from 20 years ago, and just because it was called avant-garde 20 years ago, nowadays it doesn't have like the same meaning or value, I would say.
Yeah, I think like the term kind of loses its value if a band that is deeply inspired by, for example, Vedbuensene, and sounds exactly like Vedbuensene, with a small differences. If this is also called avant-garde, then I think kind of the term loses its value, basically, because then I don't know. For me, then that's just a metal band that sounds like Vedbuensene, and it's not really avant-garde metal. But like a term like this is also hard to use, because it promises much more than it can deliver, and in the classification of music, you need solid terms, basically. You need pop, you need rock, you need techno, you need all these terms to make sense of it. But then I'll rather, then I guess we're kind of a metal band, basically. That's yes. Where we come from.
Yeah, and you don't struggle yourself with the idea of, is it or not more than black metal? I mean, there's experimentalism there, but that's also the difference between experimenting, because from one artist to another, it is different, the aspect or the effect or the phenomenon for experimenting. While avant-garde, it holds value in all of the world of that sort of niche, And yeah. I have an observation about your work, your music in general, that I hope to phrase it correctly. I didn't write the question, but for me, your music, I mean, there is like a pattern with you put something out every 8 years, and every 8 years, starting from 6.6 International, you kind of use the tools around music at the time, like industrial, electronics, and also the chaotic way of expressing a mixture of ideas or textures. But eventually, with time, you polish that idea and also present something that in the time context was still relevant, is still innovative, is still new. And this year, 2023, I don't know if that's the correct. Okay, so this year you came out with a new album, and for at least for me, that I would like to consider an observant of what happens around street music. I think the value of chaos has lost weight or meaning, and the most innovative bands have found a way of creating something new, avant-garde, let's say, with a different value, a more restrained music, more inward inflection. For example, Oranzi Pazuzu with their last album. I don't know if you are familiar with their work, but they create something that is not chaotic. I mean, for me, it's like listening to the Beatles, simple drum patterns, but with like this sort of alien entity into their sound. And this is what I found in your new album. It's not all chaos, it's more emotion, but the way you conjoin all of the ideas, it still has this a strong quality to be called innovative in the current landscape, is what I'm trying to tell.
Yeah, because I think, I don't know when, but it suddenly at some point it dawned on me that the thing people are really conflating innovation with is actually a higher and higher technical level and more and more kind of distorted chaos. And it seemed at some point that this was kind of the only reference point for innovation. And it didn't really sound very innovative anymore. It just sounded more and more kind of saturated and a bit like gimmicky in a sense, like you're covering up all these, like you're trying to be crazy so hard. It's not even eclectic. And there's no sincerity left there. It's just like that you're running. So you're just trying to outrun the person in front of you, and this is an external motivation. So I was very conscious about this time, like let's fuck all these external motivations, and try to kind of unpack what is beneath all the distracting chaos, basically, and just try to carry that forward and see if that holds water, in a sense, and this gives room for a lot of other stuff, like all the layering on the album and the vocals and how to kind of express the lyrics, because now I had so much naked space, basically, that wasn't oversaturated with a lot of noise, basically. So no, but I think that's the thing, maybe as you grow older, you kind of learn to be more and more honest about, what you put out, and maybe fantasy albums doesn't cut it anymore, fantasy albums like, I'm going to stand on the demon tower and hail my Lord Satan and cut you in half. Maybe, at some point that, it gets old, basically, like there's no substance there. It's just storytelling, So I try to dare to kind of make something that I wouldn't know the expectance to, I didn't know if people would be impressed or embarrassed reading my lyrics this time, because they are so sincere, basically. But I thought that is the brave thing to do as an artist, not just go to the well-established tropes and redo them over and over again until you're finished, basically.
Would you say that you remained observant of the landscape of your music, or how do you stay informed on the music that, or the elements that you decide to put into your music? For example, the electronic.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. I haven't for a few years now, because I've been too cooked up in the studio, and the too many hours working with music, then you don't want to go home listening to music. But in these years when I'm creating content, I do listen to a lot of music, not only metal. Of course, there are metal influences as well, but music in general, a lot of alternative rock music, a lot of classical music, a lot of metal as well, of course, and whatever will come my way to sound interesting, and it's also I think after internet, now there's a lot of big genres, basically, that are not pop genres, that are still not popular music, but they're really big. So because they are big on YouTube or whatever, so you can find really interesting music that has a lot of followers, and you get pieces and bits of ideas there, and you also get bits and pieces of ideas from the past, your own past, basically, like 80s music, 90s music. There's a lot of nostalgia in there as well, but the important way of using nostalgia is kind of wrapping it in today's context, like, don't make a 80s album, but please use the kind of the know-how and the technology from that era to reinvent it, basically, So I never wanted to make an album sounding like Pet Shop Boys, but there's some echoes of their albums I like to use, like and I want to form. But because we are dependent on things to make music, I need a guitar, I need a drum kit, and in the abstract world, you're similarly dependent on input, basically.
So do your channel all sorts of influences in a cryptic or abstract way, or even in a more transparent way into your music? I mean,
yeah,
you can approach it like that.
You have direct influences, and a lot of influences, you're not really conscious about them. It's not like, you sit down and you say, I'm going to sit on YouTube for 5 hours now to see if I can find some influences. Right. Some influences are just there, and they come out when you make music. And then there was another influence here as well, because I knew what the lyrics were going to be about. Even before I wrote them, I knew kind of what subjects I wanted to touch on. So that's a direct influence on the music as well, because having these topics, I can't make circus music, right? So, so it kind of guides me in the way that, okay, having this and this in mind, kind of to find a general term, kind of explore psychological darkness, basically, not mythological but psychological darkness. What sounds should accompany that? If I'm trying to find the facticity in emotion or moods, which sounds describes this mood the best way, basically. So this is also a direct influence.
And you do a sort of try and error. I mean, how do you approach the making of a new album? The mood, the tone, the concept? Yeah.
That's why it takes a long time, because first couple of years, it's first year or whatever, it's just thinking, basically. Thinking. Like, is there any more? Can I do something else? And then when the idea suddenly forms, in a sense, like, okay, I think I know what I want to do. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. Then it's a trial and error thing, You try, you record yourself, and, you write and stuff like that, and you listen back to it, and it was like, no, this isn't it. This has nothing to do with what I'm searching for. Rubbish. And then it can take maybe a year, and then you get your first maybe half of a song. It's like, here's something. This is the emotion I'm putting in, and now when I'm listening to the speakers, this is the emotion I'm getting back. They correlate. So now you kind of have a blueprint, basically, that you can build on. The work isn't nearly done. Now it's just started, and you're like, it's 2.5 years already. That's flown by.
So you actively and consciously search for something different, or something that you may stumble upon, even by accident, but is something that resonates with you.
Yeah.
With what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think it's also a conscious choice, because I don't want to make another album that sounded like the previous album. In the sense, it's also out of respect for the previous album. Because if I duplicated, I lessen the value of it.
Yeah. That's the way to go, in my opinion. So you don't recycle all ideas, or you start from scratch always?
I think, if you're a musician yourself, you will hear that I do recycle a lot of ideas. But I don't haphazard, or I don't just recycle them. I'm a big Baroque nerd, so a lot of my themes follow that kind of that notion, but I like to present things when I take a theme back, or something that is similar to a theme I already made. I want to present it differently, or in a different context, or so there has to be some sort of familiarity there, So, but I take that familiarity and put it in a new context. This way I can use a familiarity of language, but I can tell a new story.
Yeah, because now you have your own language and you expand from it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the experience for over 3 decades of making your own music.
Yeah. So in able to kind of tell a new story instead of retelling the previous story, I need to take the familiar language and put it into another contextual kind of world, basically. And you know, sometimes it's just small tweaks that makes a big difference, you know. Like the guitar riffs or whatever, they can basically be the same. You can slow down the tempo, you can amp up the tempo, you can add different beats to them, you can use other layers like synthesizers, you can expand on your vocal choices, you know, and suddenly you have a brand new representation of your kind of previous art, basically.
I have one question before we move forward fully into the new album, about Umbra Omega and your dissonant vocals. I believe there's a name for that technique. Sprichstimme in German.
Yeah. I didn't do the vocals on Umbra Omega.
Okay.
But I did the production for them and engineering. I think the pitched vocals is basically just an added effect. So it's basically basically an effect. It's something you add to the voice. It's not an actual voice, basically. It takes the actual voice and it distorts it.
Okay. Because I kind of found some resemblance in one song in Black Medium Current. Maybe it's the
I have not used any pitch shifters on my voice on Black Medium Current. I wanted all the vocal representation to be kind of my voice, basically.
Organic or analog.
But you know, there are effects on the vocals. There are reverbs and there are delays and stuff like that that kind of gives the voice a bit of steroids and a bit of help, basically. But in the end, I didn't want to distort the voice, basically.
I want to talk also about your live stage persona. Your trance-like mannerisms and the shadow type of painting in your face. Does it have a symbolic weight in your performance? All these movements and motion?
The paint is basically just an abstraction of where I'm from, basically. I'm a Norwegian guy with an Indian heritage, you know. You can put more into it, of course, like one can go down that rabbit hole and discuss it. But, you know, it's not a supernatural thing or anything. It doesn't give me, you know, like demonic powers or anything. It's just like... maybe in a sense an artistic representation of the person Yusaf. And when it comes to the stage performance, it's basically, you know, for many years when you do live, you're kind of nervous, you know, when you don't have the stage experience, and to kind of learn how to avoid that nervousness, you play more concerts, and then you also study other metal guys, you know, you see how they stand and how they kind of how they act and stuff like that. So at some point I was like, fuck that, you know, like what you know, it seems like it's always the same leg on the monitor and all that fucking bore. So I think, okay, how can I do my live performance, like get the nervous tweaks out of the way, and at the same time not just going through the fucking old stupid boring motions. So I thought like the immersiveness in the music, you know, and being kind of a physical representation of what is going on musically, lyrically, you know, like try to kind of be a translator for that. It made the most sense to me, because then I have to be so focused all the time, basically, you know. So this is how that came about.
It's like a suite to enter into your Vicotnik persona, and well, I might be wrong in my reading, but I've seen your videos hopefully I will see you this year in Mexico.
Yeah.
But I've seen your videos, and the idea that I get is some sort of spirituality, like I mentioned, trance, like like immersing yourself in that mindset.
Yeah. And and I do that through the music I hear on stage, and knowing the topics of the lyrics, like what are the lyrics trying to tell. A lot of I guess a lot of our stuff has been dealing with certain kind of mental conditions, like for since 666 International, at least, and that kind of I try to bring that sort of behaviorism on the stage that will kind of represent the content of the lyric and kind of the output and outpouring of the music. So this means I'm basically 100% focused all the time. So I'm never kind of worried, oh, what should I do now? Should I put my foot on the monitor again? Should I go to the left side of the crowd? Because I'm totally immersed in it, basically.
Yes.
Whatever happens, it happens.
It's not even improv. It's just your impulses, right? Like while you are standing there.
Yeah, that's it.
So this experience, or while you are creating music, gives you also some sort of guidance into, okay, maybe this will be cool or interesting while I'm standing on the stage to make this passage in the song. So you do this sort of tweaks in your music?
I didn't catch the question. I'm sorry.
So if the thinking of these songs, the new songs, how will they be presented on a live performance also give you guidance into creating them? If you consciously make choices.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, but I think I didn't actually think a lot about it. I think this is a problem we will solve later. And I knew, the album I've been most conscious about live performances is Supervillain Outcast. And because on that album I made short songs, I made kind of hooky songs, they had choruses and verses and stuff like that. So that was kind of my conscious way of thinking. I want to make these songs so they belong on a stage. So, but Kamma, Umbra, Omega and Black Medium Current, I don't want to think like that anymore, because I think it inhabits the music creation. If you're going to think about something in one context as it's belonging to another context. So I need to stay focused in the context of being a creative person in the studio, like on the creativity itself, instead of worrying how this will turn out on the stage. But I know also, back in my head, that it will be all right. We'll figure it out. We'll sort it out, and a lot of things will give themselves. And we also live in a time now in 2023 where there's a lot of technology available, and if you compare to 20 years ago, the prices today of buying the things you need to make everything right and sound good on stage, it's like a fraction of what it used to cost,
Yeah, so you don't restrain yourself creatively.
No, that's what I mean. I think like if I'm too worried about like how these songs will work on a stage, then I'm kind of inhibiting the creative process. So it's more like, okay, let me focus on the creativity now and have no boundaries to that, and let this phase take me wherever it's going to take me, and I'll worry about the other contexts later, basically.
Okay, so moving on to a question about the album itself. I haven't listened to any music since 2 days ago, the passing of my dog. Luster, by the way, was his name. Beautiful, beautiful dog. And I wasn't expecting his death, It was unexpected. Just one morning, he was dead under my bed. And but I heard Black Medium Current today in preparation for the interview. I have listened before. So this album will be forever my associated with his memory of his passing, and I have one album associated with him coming into my life out of nowhere, which is by I took the name for him for that band, and now I have this album for years to come to remember him. That memory will stay there. I don't know till when. But my question for you in that regard, at what time of your life did you find this album or this song found you? The emotions, the approach, the overall process, or the thought process behind?
Yeah. First, I want to say I'm sorry. And like I told you before we started the interview, I had 2 dogs myself over my lifetime, so I know exactly how you feel, and and if it seems like a silly way to say it, but like I'm glad in the sense that this album was there because it really, really correlates with that kind of stuff, basically, like I had a lot of friends, like dead friends visiting me, like over the last few years. In my head, of course, they're not really there. It's just like their psychological imprint on me, like people I've lost over the years. So I really wanted to make this album, in a sense, together with them, like and I read another comment by a person as well that said he lost his father 2 weeks ago, and this album kind of translated all of his emotions really well. So it felt like a soothing comfort to him. And like I said, this album, it is about that. It's about the psychological darkness. It's about realities we have that crumble, because this is the perpetual state of the human existence, is that it will break down, and it will break down in parts, and we don't talk about this in our normal lives. Basically, we have no kind of expression for it. So I really wanted to kind of take the tacticity of these moods and make them into sounds, basically.
Okay, well, I'm sorry also for the loss of your dogs.
Thank you.
He was my life partner, essentially. We do all.
How long did you have him?
7 years.
7 years. What kind of dog?
I don't know the word. Mixed sort of race.
Yeah.
He was abandoned in front of my street. There's like a forest there. And one night I was in my garage doing some cleaning, and he was abandoned. I didn't saw it, but he was a puppy, and he walked across the street to my garage, and I found him sniffing in my sneakers while I was standing there, and the rest is history. I took it, he lived with me for 7 years. But it was unexpected, like I'm telling you, and this album also gives me comfort, and I'm glad for having this album, having these sounds to channel the emotions. I don't have the lyrics. I will search them later, but I want to understand it better, because it's already a special record for me. And thank you for your honesty.
Thank you.
Have you at some point run out of gas, let's say, and considered quitting making music?
Yeah, sure, all the time. But it always draws me back, this isn't a undivided pleasure. It's given me a lot of things in life, but it's also costed me a lot of things in life, So it's not like it's just a joy, So, but I think this is just what I do, It's who I am and what I have become, basically. if I cut this out of my life, it will be like cutting my head off, and just walking to the story, So I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But it's an important thing for me, at least, to express that I don't like my primarily goal or reason for playing in bands isn't because I think it's fun, like it has a deeper kind of resonance or reasoning behind it.
It has to demand something of yourself.
Yeah, it's very demanding, and sometimes for very little, like I'm not trying to put down all the great things, and reviews and all that, but it's still 8 years of my life I put into it. And how can you measure that? How can you measure 8 years of your life, basically?
Priceless.
So you don't. So that's why you just accept it. You accept that this is who you are. This is what you do. And it sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's horrible. Sometimes, sometimes you want to do it. Other times you just want to quit. And that's just how it is. I guess everything that's important is complicated.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and challenge is what brings interesting results in life, I will say.
Exactly.
Okay, these are just general questions. What are the things about extreme metal or black metal that you don't subscribe as an individual?
One more time, sorry.
Yeah, what are the things about black metal as a whole that you don't subscribe to as an individual?
What I don't subscribe to?
Yes. That you don't like, that you don't fuck with, let's say. I don't know if that's understood.
Yeah, no, not really. So we're talking about the genre, like extreme metal, and if
as a community, even.
Yeah, it's the standard stuff, For me, black metal is an art form. So obviously, when it comes, it's an easy genre to kind of make into something it is not, because it's a male-dominated genre. Yes, it is, and it's a predominantly white genre. Not historically speaking, not where it comes from, basically come as well. If you go historically far enough back, it's black music as well. But so we have a lot of racial connotations in certain parts of the black metal world, which is something I don't subscribe to. I think the racism is probably the worst idea somebody ever came up with, and in fact there is no such thing as a race. It's no biological thing that you can point to that can divide us into races. There's not like a something inside a body. It's just like sun sheltering, basically. It's a production of an enzyme in the skin, because so it won't make damage to your skin. So I guess when bands become more focused about spreading their political word, or when bands become too dogmatic, like they're trying to be a cult or whatever like that, then I think they're missing the point. In the sense, for me, black metal was kind of coming over all that kind of adversity, in the sense that a lot of us from the black metal early days, we come from quite small towns outside the big centers, and where we came from and where we lived, there was a very narrow-minded culture that we didn't fit into. So kind of black metal was an antecedent towards that, like the kind of the remedy to the poison. So to see then black metal take a 180 and suddenly become in many ways what it initially fought against, seems a bit stupid. And then you have the elitist black metal. It doesn't make sense to me because, black metal is made from the middle class, basically. It's a response from the middle class. What I truly enjoy is seeing black metal bands in Iran and India and, all these places where the social struggle is still going on,
Rebel.
So, yeah, for me, that's black metal. You have an Iranian person, hiding his T-shirts because he will be killed if somebody sees him. He has to book a rehearsal room in secret to practice his songs. Otherwise, he can be arrested, even probably killed. This is black metal.
This is black metal. Before we move into an important part of this conversation, which is your visit to Mexico in the next months, I want to talk about the album artwork. I find it interesting that you always choose something, I don't know if the word is elegant or just different from what is out there. How do you work? Maybe the symbolisms, the color scheme, did you have something in mind or wasn't at all attached to you?
Yeah, I pretty much knew what I wanted this time with the spectral emissions, with the colors and mostly space, basically. Mostly openness. You use the word elegance, and I can. That's sort of what I'm aimed for, with at least the two last album covers, and I think also it's a good representations of the music, in the sense that the cover is abstract in the sense that you can get lost in it, and you can also get lost in the content of the album. So they kind of suit each other very well. And the spectral colors, that kind of is a representation of our physical reality, basically something tangible, something you can feel, see, taste, touch, whatever, whereas the blackness in the background is basically just the vast potential of everything that can be. So even if it's just a blackness back there, it's very full, in the sense it contains a lot of things, even if it's empty.
Depth, and there's not just one answer to it to define the quality. Do you believe in synesthesia? Sorry. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think, this is what I want to do, on the artistic level, when it pertains to the music and the lyrics as well, that it has some abstractions of content, but the listener has to kind of fill in their own experience to it. And like when we were talking about the passing of your dog, in the sense that fits into the album, but you're not the author of this album, but still you could kind of place your experience and your emotion into this album, and it made total sense. And I think that's very valuable from the perspective of artistic expression, basically.
You mentioned the color palette of the both albums, and I'm curious if you believe in synesthesia, the ability to hear colors with the music, because you kind of repeat the color scheme on both albums.
The color schemes. Yeah, it's not a conscious choice in relation to why I did the colors I did, but definitely I think I read about another artist the other day that said he every song he made, he started with a color in his mind, and maybe one color or two colors, and then he made the songs from that perspective, So in that sense, of course, it's the other way around, but in that sense, he's trying to recreate hearing color, basically.
And after the album was finished and you heard the full work, did you see those colors? Because to me, it has some sort of blueness to it. That's just my read.
Yeah, blue is kind of repeated theme in DØDHEIMSGARD since Satanic Art EP, which was blue, and I painted myself blue for many years. I use a blue veil today, and you also use a blue kind of suit and stuff like that. So and I used to play just a small stint. I used to play a little bit of theater in Stockholm in the end of the 90s. So I kind of took my blue persona and put into that theater and performed also this persona basically in a theater setting for, I don't know, maybe 20-25 shows, something like that, you know. So blue has kind of been a reoccurring kind of theme. We use a lot of blue colors in also on the stage lighting and stuff like that. But I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the depth of the color, basically, that it contains so much light and so much darkness, basically, at the same time. It seems like blue can go to black at any moment, but blue can also go to daylight at any moment. So yeah.
Now that you mention, it's like blue is the one color I think about space, and space, exactly, between light and darkness, it has those potential duality to the color.
Yeah, it's like an element to it. It's almost like you say, space, and at the same time it's water, you know, like it's just a color that's three-dimensional in a sense.
Yeah, so okay, now it's part of your identity and your visual aesthetic identity as well as Dodheimsgard. Okay, now in the coming months you are coming to Mexico for the first time in your whole career. Are you excited about playing here for the first time?
Very, and some part of the excitement is the unexpected, basically, because now I'm going out of my kind of playground and coming into another part of the world where things are both the same and different at the same time, you know. So I'm really excited, and maybe the gig I'm most excited for this year. Not trying to shit on my other audience, but so it has nothing to do with that. It's basically just will be very interesting to visit a new place, basically.
And I can tell you that for us is one of the most important gigs in this year, the visit of Dodheimsgard.
Wow.
How was the offer presented to you? Was it your first invitation at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe some management has been working on stuff like this before that never happened. But this was maybe, I think, the first time we got an invitation to Mexico where it felt like, okay, there's a big chance this might happen. And I was also really pleasantly surprised, because when it got posted, I saw so many comments in Spanish, you know, saying, you know, and at that point, when seeing them on Spanish, I was thinking they probably say, who the fuck are they? You know? and then I translated a lot of the comments, and they were so overwhelmingly positive. It's a synergy there, in a sense. Like it's almost like the Mexican people that discovered that we were coming there also understand how difficult it actually is for us coming, you know, like, yeah. So they also see that side of it, you know, like, and that makes it also a special event for them, you know.
Yeah, and we as the audience, the Mexican audience, are very much used to repeating visits from the same bands, and you know, you have 3 decades of work, and this is your first time, so that tells you how much are we used to not getting many different bands here.
Yeah.
But we are also very excited.
Yeah. I think it makes it very, very special, you know, because it is one of those things that actually might be once in a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you one say that about a lot of things, but for the most things one say that about is bullshit. But this is actually one of those things that potentially actually can be once in a lifetime. So really, really looking forward to it.
Here is an event, and not just one concert, but an event, and also you coming with a new album, which happens every 8 years. I mean, the alignment is special, if anything.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of hoping for. And you know, like I haven't been there, and so I've never been on a concert to a concert in Mexico, either as a band or as an audience. You know, but I'm hoping, like in my mind, I picture it as not being as complacent or as spoiled as the European audience that are used to, you know, having all bands coming through their kind of major cities at least all the time. And I think that will have a physical kind of expression. You will see the difference.
Yeah, the energy will definitely deliver for the band. I can assure you. So no expectations at all, or maybe big expectations without trying to define them. But I have one question about Mexico. You made one joke about coming here, which I mean, Mexicans are the first one to mock of ourselves and the current state as a country. You know, all of the problems, the issues. But and I saw in the comments that the people that triggered about your joke weren't even Mexicans, you know. So is that political correctness that is nowadays very much present in anything?
And I think when you start using political correctness as a damaging weapon in contexts where it's actually an unrelated issue, it's very destructive, you know. So but you know, there was nothing, you know, my comment, there's no race in there, not at all. So yeah, you know, it's the time we live in. I think this will pass because it's a bad idea, and there's coming a lot of literature out now explaining why cancel culture is really, really damaging, basically. And I think these people on the internet, they are just waiting for comments that they can, you know, because I think they get some kind of pleasure out of it, basically. So it's a very selfish act, you know, like just attacking somebody randomly for nothing, basically. And you know, Norwegians, we always make fun of ourselves as well, you know. So it's you know, when it's a difficult time where you have to be very careful what you joke around with. But I think like joke and humor is basically a very good way of talking about our social challenges, and it has been that for many years, you know. Like this is how we not only talk about them, but this is also a way of venting frustration, you know, how you can live with a thing that is bad, but at the same time also laugh at it. That's kind of empowering in a way, you know.
It's a good starting point, and that, now that you mention it, is essentially that's what we as Mexicans do, be empowered by it. But I'm genuinely curious about your perception as a Norwegian citizen about Mexico as a country. If you could share your take, no problem.
You know, of course, Mexico. When you live in Norway, you don't get all the good news about Mexico. You know, you have all the fast tracks to Mexico. You have the Mexican American border, you know. So there's a lot of kind of struggle tied to it. And so as a Norwegian, unless you're kind of into geography and history and stuff like that, you have all these bits and pieces that make out Mexico for you, you know, like I said, the Mexican North American border or US border. I mean, you have I think it was in 1986 you had world championships in football there. Obviously, we know what Mexican food is, but we have a kind of our own version of it, you know. Tequila, we know. So it's all these bits and pieces, you know, and often also kind of you have Mexican characterizations in American movies, which we watch a lot over here, you know. But I think like most Norwegians, at least that will consider or want to travel to Mexico, they can put all that aside. You know, we all know that has nothing to do with the country. It's kind of a parody in a sense. You know, it's an exaggerated version, and so we understand that this country is as complex and multifaceted as any other country in the world, basically.
Of course, of course. Well, I hope your experience here is pleasant, at least. I hope you can go beyond the show to take the time to see places if you want.
Yeah.
And we are very much looking forward to the gig. It's the Mexico Black Metal Fest. You are going to be headlining that night, and sure it's going to be special. One last question, which I always do, or I always ask, if you could compare or connect, relate, assimilate, just for the sake of answering my question, this album with another another existing piece of work or form of art beyond music, a book, painting, a movie, which will it be and why?
Oh, that was a very difficult question. And it's difficult in part because I haven't thought about it. But I've always kind of enjoyed cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So cinematography has a big place in my music, you know. That's why it's so visual in a sense, you know. Yeah. So, and I always enjoyed David Lynch's way of telling stories, you know, be it Twin Peaks or Blue Velvet or something, because he always kind of has something in his movies that are on the surface, it's very normal, you know. It's a normal neighborhood, it's neighbors, it's a hotel, you know, and the hotel has guests. And then there's that underlying current there, you know, which kind of always challenges the established reality, like an underpinning darkness that in many ways are more real than the surface level reality, because we kind of come to realize that the surface level reality, you know, the green grass on the lawn, the flowers, the balcony, all these are constructed. It's just constructed for our comfort. It's not real. It's just, you know, to keep us up, not keep us too worried or too full of an anxiety. So, you know, in lack for a total kind of emission into another piece of art, I would say that I like David Lynch's mindset of presenting some kind of familiarity but distorting it. So yeah, I have to go with David Lynch.
Okay, I like that phrase, familiarity but distorted. Yeah, that sums it all quite well. Well, Mr. Vicotnik, Mr. Yusaf, thank you for your time. I have a pleasant conversation. I was very much looking forward to spending this time with you. I have one favor to ask you, please. If you could just say the words in Spanish, "Hello, friends of Retumba," for the intro of the interview, and then invite them to listen to your album or to wait for your show here, or even invite them to join us in this conversation in English, of course. But the phrase is "Hola, amigos de Retumba," and then the rest.
Okay, maybe we'll do a few takes.
Of course.
Okay. Let's go very spacious. Hola, Hola, amigos. Retumba?
Hola, amigos de Retumba, correct.
Okay, let's get some lighting, some makeup. Hola, amigos. Retumba. I had a pleasant talk with Alfonso today. We touched on many different subjects pertaining to both art and life, and where art imitates life and vice versa. We're also coming over to Mexico in the autumn of the year. Please join us. Which guitar should I pick along on the way? I have some guitars on the wall. I also have, too many guitars. Take care. Now fuck off.
That was perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, I have the chance to say hi when you come here to Mexico.
Yeah.
Well,
So search me up on my messenger.
your messenger. Oh, Facebook, you mean?
Facebook, yeah. Find me and add me.
Actually, I add you a couple of maybe a week ago, and we are friends already.
Yeah, then we are there. So when we travel, we can keep it. When we come to Mexico, we can keep in touch and we can meet up for a beer and a nice talk.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for your time. I know it took much of your time tonight, but it was necessary.
That's okay. That's okay.
Well,
no problem.
Thank you, and
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
And
have a good night.
See you soon, buddy. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.